mother-in-law insists on inviting my husband's ex to all the family gatherings to prove he made the wrong choice. Everything explodes when he makes a drastic decision on his birthday. For context, I'm 29 years old, and I've been married to my 30-year-old husband for 3 years. We've been together for a total of 6 years. Although our relationship has always been strong, there has been a huge shadow over us from the beginning. His mother has never fully accepted me. But what makes this even more uncomfortable is that she's obsessed with my husband's ex. I'm not saying this in an exaggerated way, it's a fact. Since the day he and I got engaged, she has insisted on inviting his ex to all the family gatherings. If you ask me, I don't have anything against her. But it's obvious my mother-in-law doesn't bring her to these events out of pure courtesy. It's as if she wanted to prove a point, as if she needed me to constantly know that there was another woman before me, and that in her opinion she was the right one. At first, it didn't affect me that much, but over time it's become psychological torture. I met her at a Christmas dinner when my husband and I had only been together a few months. I was surprised to see her there, but I thought that maybe they still had a friendly relationship. I remained polite, but from the first moment she made it clear that I was an interloper. She made comments about how my mother-in-law had always said she would be her daughter-in-law, and what a surprise it was that my husband had taken a different path. My husband noticed the awkward atmosphere and tried to distract me, but his mother and his ex seemed to have a silent pact. Every family gathering became a kind of mental battle in which I had to endure her passive-aggressive comments. The ex talked about anecdotes she and my husband shared as if I wasn't there, and my mother-in-law encouraged them to remember good times. I tried not to give it any importance. I'm not one to make a big deal out of small things, and at the end of the day, my husband chose me over her. However, as time went on, the situation only got worse. Every birthday, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, she was always there with the same speech, the same looks, and the same hints. And each time, my mother-in-law made sure to emphasize how beautiful, intelligent, and perfect she was. There was even one occasion when she pulled out family photo albums in the middle of dinner and started showing me pictures of them together on family vacations. When my husband saw how this affected me, he tried to talk to his mother several times, but she always played the victim, saying that she was still friends with the ex and didn't see why that affected me. The worst part was that her family also downplayed the situation, saying I was overreacting. But the final straw happened recently. At my mother-in-law's birthday, a surprise so absurd that it left the entire family completely silent and caused my husband to make a decision that no one expected. My mother-in-law's birthday has always been a big family event. She's the type of person who needs to be the center of attention and does everything possible to make her day special. My husband and I had already decided we would only attend for a couple of hours because, honestly, after years of enduring the same situation, we were both exhausted. But what we didn't know was that this year she had planned a show that was even more ridiculous than everything that came before. From the moment we arrived, I noticed there was a strange vibe in the room. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like something was off. My mother-in-law was smiling too much, as if she were anxiously waiting for something to happen. And then there she was, my husband's ex, dressed as if she were at an awards gala. I wasn't surprised to see her at these events anymore, but there was something different about her attitude. She was too confident, too comfortable. It seemed like she was waiting for something, as if she knew something I didn't. During the first part of dinner, everything went by with the same discomfort as always. My husband's ex sat strategically in front of us, and whenever she could, she brought up a topic related to their past together. Like when they went on a college trip, when my husband gave her her first expensive necklace, or when her parents already considered them family. My husband was noticeably tense, not responding to any of her advances. She just looked at me from time to time, as if to say, "Don't fall for this." But the bomb exploded when it was time for the cake. My mother-in-law stood up with a big smile and asked for everyone's attention. 2 cakes were brought to the table. One was obviously for her birthday, but the other had a message that made everyone stop almost immediately. My husband's ex was the first to react. She stood up, took the microphone, which someone had left on the table, and started talking as if this was a reality show. "Today, exactly 10 years ago, he gave me a promise ring," she said, then took the ring out of her purse and held it up as if it were a sacred relic. My husband stiffened. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought it would be nice to remember, she continued with a fake smile. After all, important moments should be celebrated. There was a deathly silence. The family, who until then had acted as if this was normal, finally seemed uncomfortable. Some of her cousins even looked at each other, not knowing what to do. But the worst was yet to come. My mother-in-law applauded, as if this was the most beautiful thing in the world. "Oh, honey, this is so beautiful. I can't believe it's been so long," she said with real emotion in her voice. Then, as if it couldn't get any more ridiculous, my mother-in-law took a knife, cut a piece of the cake, and offered it first to my husband's ex before him. "This is a special day for you, so I want us to cut this cake together," she said, completely ignoring my existence. That's when my husband lost his patience. He stood up so quickly that the chair hit the floor with a loud bang. Everyone looked at him, but he was no longer in diplomatic mode. "What the hell is going on here?" he blurted out with a rage I'd never seen before. My mother-in-law tried to calm him down, but he wouldn't let her speak. He took out years of pent-up frustration. "Seriously, did you do all this for what? To make fun of my wife? To make me look like an idiot?" he said, pointing at his mother and his ex with a mixture of disgust and fury. "I can't believe you're so obsessed with my past relationship that you'd rather humiliate the person I love than accept that I'm not with her." My mother-in-law tried to defend herself, but my husband wouldn't let her. "I'm fed up with this. I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to talk to you again. If you'd rather live in the past, do it alone." Total silence. My mother-in-law looked at him as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. She didn't expect her son to make such a drastic decision. Then he took my hand and said, "We're leaving." And without waiting any longer, we left. While my mother-in-law and her ex stared at us in a daze, we left the house without looking back. My husband was breathing hard, his jaw tense, and although I wanted to say something, I didn't know what to say. It was the first time in years that I saw him truly furious, not upset, not uncomfortable, but with pure, contained rage that seemed on the verge of exploding. We got in the car, and he took off without saying a word. For the first few minutes of the drive, the silence was thick. I didn't want to be the first to speak because I knew he was processing everything that had just happened. When he finally did, his voice was low but thick with frustration. "I can't believe my own mother did that. She planned the whole thing. The cake, the speech, even her presence. And she knew this was going to upset me. She knew this was going to hurt you, and yet she did it." I let him vent. He had held this in for years, trying to be the understanding son, the husband who protected me without it seeming like he was exaggerating, but now it didn't make sense to hold anything back. "You know what? The worst thing is that I let her do this. I allowed this to get this far," he said, his voice breaking. I looked at him. "How can you say that?" "Because it's the truth," he replied in a dry tone. "For years I let her manipulate me. She used the excuse of 'we're just friends' to justify bringing my ex to every event. Why? Because I didn't want to fight with her. Because I didn't want to end the relationship. But I can't take it anymore." He took a deep breath, and when he spoke again, his tone was more determined. "I don't want us to have any more contact with her." I looked at him, making sure he was being serious. "Are you completely sure?" The man who had spent years justifying his mother's behavior was finally ready to end the relationship. That night when we got home, he blocked her number. He blocked his ex, his mother, and any relatives who might try to mediate or convince him to change his mind. I was in shock. This was huge. I knew his family wasn't going to sit idly by, and I wasn't mistaken. The next morning, I woke up to 27 missed calls from an unknown number. I checked my messages and saw that his aunt had written to me, "Stop manipulating my nephew. You're a vixen who has brainwashed him." Then another message from his cousin, "I can't believe you're separating a mother from her son. What kind of woman does that?" Finally, one from his mother, a long, drama-filled message saying that I had destroyed his family and that my husband would leave me sooner or later because I could never replace his true soulmate. I read it silently. But when my husband woke up and saw my face, he knew immediately. "What happened?" I handed him the phone. When he finished reading, he let out a humorless laugh. "They don't know when to give up, do they?" Without hesitation, he blocked each of those numbers too. But the war wasn't over because what his mother did next was so low, so desperate, that it finally confirmed that distancing himself from her was the best decision of our lives. We thought that everything would calm down after blocking his family, but we were very wrong. The next day, my husband received an email from his mother. Not a normal message, not an attempt at an apology, but a letter full of manipulation and venom disguised as concern. Son, I know you're confused and that this woman has taken you away from your family, but deep in your heart, you know that I've always wanted the best for you. I raised you, I took care of you, I gave you everything, and now for no reason, you've turned your back on me. I just want to talk to you. Listen to me, please. Don't do something you'll regret. My husband read the email aloud and, when he finished, closed the laptop with a bang. Do you really think this is going to work? He said in disbelief. No, I answered, because we knew his mother wasn't going to give up so easily. And sure enough, 2 days later, she did something we never imagined. It was a morning like any other. I was making coffee while my husband was getting ready to leave for work. Everything seemed normal until there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, I saw a woman in a formal suit with a serious expression. Good morning. My name is Lawyer's name. I'm here representing your mother-in-law. I froze. Excuse me? The woman took an envelope out of her purse and handed it to me. Your mother-in-law has requested a family mediation order. Basically, she wants you and your husband to attend a mandatory session to try to reconcile. My husband arrived at that moment, and upon seeing the scene, his face turned red with anger. Are you telling me that my mother is legally forcing us to talk to her? The lawyer cleared her throat. It's not exactly legally required, but if you don't attend, she could use it against you in the future. My husband exploded. This is ridiculous. The lawyer just nodded. I'm just doing my job. After she left, we sat on the couch trying to process what had just happened. My husband ran his hands through his hair in frustration. She's completely lost her mind. I was still in shock. We can't just ignore this, right? But we're not going to fall for her game either, he responded firmly. If she thinks she's going to force us to talk to her with legal tactics, she's very wrong. At that moment, we decided to take matters into our own hands. That same afternoon, my husband hired a lawyer and explained the entire situation to him. He showed him the messages, the calls, the manipulation, even the birthday show. The lawyer's response was clear. If she continues with this harassment, we can file a restraining order. My husband didn't think twice. Let's do it. His mother wanted to play dirty. We were also ready to end this madness once and for all. The simple fact that we would have to consider a restraining order against his own mother was something we never imagined. But here we were, in a law office, preparing everything to protect our peace of mind. When the lawyer explained the steps to follow, he made it clear that we had enough evidence of harassment and manipulation to present the case before a judge. My husband was determined. It's no longer just for you, he told me on the way back. It's for my own mental health. I don't want this woman to continue controlling our lives. So with everything prepared, we filed the request for a restraining order. But his mother wasn't going to sit idly by. 3 days later, while I was working from home, I heard the doorbell ring. I thought it was a delivery or something harmless, but when I looked through the peephole, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was her. My mother-in-law was standing at the door of our house. My heart raced. I couldn't believe the audacity she had after everything she had done. I know you're there, she said loudly. I just want to talk. I ignored her presence and walked away from the door. I didn't owe her an answer, but she didn't leave. Now you can't even face me. You're so weak. Her voice grew more aggressive. You know what? I don't care. I just want my son to hear me. She pulled out her phone and started calling him, right there at the entrance of our house. My husband was at work, but when I saw his name on my cell phone, I knew he was also receiving the calls. When he finally answered, the conversation was brief. Mom, stay away from my house. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother. You were my mother. Now you're just a person who doesn't respect my boundaries. She yelled something else, but my husband had already hung up. Minutes later, my phone rang. It was him. Call the police. I didn't hesitate. I reported her presence outside our house as harassment, and when the patrol car arrived, she was still standing there in front of the door, as if waiting for us to magically let her in. When the officers asked her to leave, she made a scene. She yelled that we were treating her like a stranger, that I had manipulated her son, that this was all my fault. But in the end, they forced her to leave. That was the final nail in the coffin. The lawyer called us a few hours later with the best news. The judge had approved the restraining order. My mother-in-law was officially prohibited from coming near us. But what we didn't know was that she and her ex would have one last trick up their sleeves, one that would leave us completely speechless. We thought that with the restraining order, we would finally have peace. That after everything she had done, my mother-in-law would realize that she no longer had power over us and would leave us alone. But no. A week after the incident at our house, my husband and I were enjoying our first quiet night in a long time. We had ordered takeout, were watching a series, and for the first time in weeks, we felt like all this was finally falling behind us. Until I received a message from an unknown number. "Tell your husband to call me now. It's urgent." My heart stopped for a second. "Who is it?" my husband asked, seeing my face. I copied the number into the WhatsApp search engine to see if it had a profile picture. And there it was. It was my husband's ex. My stomach turned. Now what did they want? What could they be planning? My husband sighed, already tired of it all. Block her. And that's what I did. I thought that would end it, but we had no idea what was coming. The next day, my husband received an email from his boss. The subject line simply said, "We need to talk." He had no idea what it could be, so he called immediately. "What's going on?" he asked. "Someone filed a complaint with HR against you," his boss told him. "What?" my husband replied, completely confused. "I can't tell you the details until you meet with us, but it's a serious matter." We went to the office immediately. What they showed us completely paralyzed us. It was a letter signed by my husband's ex, saying that he had stalked her for years. "I've tried to be strong, but I can't take it anymore. After our relationship, he never stopped chasing me, texting me, following me to places, making me feel insecure in my own environment. His wife even joined in, making intimidating comments every time she saw me. For a long time, I've tried not to say anything, but I can't stand it anymore. I wanted to laugh and throw up at the same time. It was the most absurd thing I'd ever read in my life. My husband had been avoiding her for years. She was the one stalking us, not the other way around. But the problem is that accusations like this are taken very seriously in companies. My husband's boss explained that due to the nature of the complaint, they had to conduct an internal investigation and that in the meantime, they would suspend him without pay. This woman and her mother didn't just want to upset us. They wanted to destroy us. My husband was so furious that I was afraid he would slam his fist on the table, but he caught himself, took a deep breath and said, "I'm going to sue her for defamation." When we left his boss's office, my husband was boiling with rage. He didn't say anything on the way back. He just stared out the window, his hands clenched into fists, breathing deeply as if he were trying to contain an internal explosion. But I knew that something had changed inside him. This time it wasn't just anger, it was determination. When we got home, the first thing he did was call our lawyer. "I'm going to sue her and my mother." Our lawyer assured us that we had a solid case. Not only did we have years of messages and evidence of harassment, but my husband's ex had made a grave mistake by filing a false harassment claim. If we prove she's lying, the lawyer told us, we could sue her for defamation and moral damages. And that's what we did. We filed a counterclaim. But what we didn't expect was what would happen the next day. My husband was still suspended from work, waiting for the investigation to clear everything up. I had asked for a day off because I honestly couldn't concentrate on anything with all this chaos. We were at home when the doorbell rang. My husband and I looked at each other. I didn't open it. I went to the window to see who it was, and my heart stopped. It was my mother-in-law, holding her ex's hand. They were carrying plastic bags and a baby in their arms. My husband approached, and seeing them, his face turned pale. No. But before we could react, my mother-in-law raised her voice from outside. "Open the door. You can't ignore us anymore." We didn't move. We weren't going to give her the pleasure. But then his ex shouted something that left us speechless. He's your son, and it's time you acknowledged it. My husband took a step back as if he'd been hit in the chest. What the hell did you just say? He murmured. I froze. She was saying that my husband had a child with her. The ex smirked as if she had won. It's yours. It always has been. My husband let out a dry, humorless laugh. Seriously? Is that your new strategy? But my mother-in-law looked too confident. Son, it's time for you to do the right thing. And then she pulled some papers out of her purse, a request for a paternity test. My husband took them and tore them to pieces in front of her face. I'm not going to play her games. My husband's ex pretended to be hurt, but you could see in her eyes that this was just another of her dirty tricks. Then do it legally, my husband said, looking at her with such contempt that I felt chills. Because when the results come out negative, I'm going to sue you for every penny you have. My mother-in-law became hysterical. You're destroying your own family. But my husband just smiled. You're not my family. Without saying anything else, he closed the door in their faces. That was the final nail in the coffin. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. Despite the fact that my husband had made it clear that he wasn't going to fall for his mother's game or his ex's lies, the doubt lingered. Not because he believed the baby was his, but because this meant they were willing to do anything to ruin us. But then our lawyer called us with news that changed everything. He asked us to come to his office immediately. When we arrived, he was waiting for us with an expression mixing surprise and suppressed anger. You need to see this, he said, handing us a folder with documents he had obtained while investigating the false harassment complaint that my husband's ex had filed against him at work. But what we found inside had nothing to do with that complaint. It was a record of a paternity petition they themselves had filed months ago for another man. They had already tried to get someone else to take responsibility for the baby before coming to us. My husband grabbed the papers and read them over and over again, making sure he understood. Are you telling me they tried this with someone else first? Our lawyer nodded. And not only that, the guy in question already took a DNA test, and the baby isn't his either. My husband let out a sarcastic laugh. He couldn't believe how low they'd sunk. So basically, they're looking for someone to pin paternity on. The lawyer nodded. It's a desperate attempt. With this information, we had all the evidence necessary to bring them down legally. My husband immediately filed a countersuit for defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. Not only against his ex, but also against his own mother for being an accomplice to everything. The following months were an intense legal battle. My husband's ex completely broke down when confronted with the evidence. She ended up confessing that her mother had been the one who convinced her to try with my husband after the first attempt failed. But the best part was when the court rejected the paternity suit. Justice finally sided with us. Not only do you have no right to try to claim anything from him, the judge told the ex, but now you will face legal consequences for your lies. The ex ended up with a criminal record for false accusations and had to pay a heavy fine. But the real cherry on top was my mother-in-law. She tried to defend herself, but everyone saw who she really was. The whole family found out what she did and turned their backs on her. Her reputation was completely destroyed. Her own husband left her, saying he couldn't tolerate her behavior anymore. My husband never spoke to her again after everything that happened. We finally moved to another city. We wanted to leave all the poison of her family behind and start over. Today, we're at peace. No more toxic mother-in-law, no more manipulative ex. Just us. The most peculiar, hilarious, and unbelievable stories are here. From absurd situations to tales that sound straight out of a movie, get ready for the wildest real-life stories. Subscribe now and get ready to laugh, be amazed, and say, "No way."